There is a category of spending that rarely announces itself. It doesn't arrive with the weight of a rent payment or the sharpness of a grocery total. It is usually small, steady, and quiet. It sits in the same place every month, like a familiar piece of furniture that gradually becomes part of the room. Subscriptions are built to feel ordinary. A few dollars here, a slightly larger amount there. Streaming, music, cloud storage, delivery memberships, news, gaming passes, workout apps, professional tools. The list grows without looking like a list. Each item has its own story, its own moment of justification, its own "this makes sense" attached to it. Over time, what remains is not the decision to subscribe, but the environment the subscription creates. An ongoing relationship between a person and a service, mediated by a payment rail that prefers continuity over attention. The system is familiar enough to be trusted, and quiet enough to avoid scrutiny. It is rarely questioned, not because it is hidden, but because it becomes part of the background. The modern subscription appears in the middle of ordinary life. A show is released weekly and the platform is already there. A phone runs out of storage and the upgrade is one tap away. A household wants fewer shipping fees and a membership makes them vanish. A company needs design software, payroll tools, customer support systems, scheduling, analytics. Each need has a vendor, and each vendor prefers a recurring plan. Part of what makes this arrangement feel acceptable is that it maps to the way people experience services now. Entertainment is not a single purchase, it's a library that updates. Software is not a disk, it's a product that patches, syncs, and connects to other products. Even physical goods are increasingly routed through recurring access. Meal kits, razors, vitamins, pet food. The subscription becomes a proxy for availability. Another reason it feels natural is that the amounts are rarely framed as totals. A monthly price is legible in isolation, especially when compared to a single alternative. One movie ticket, one album, one delivery fee, one day pass. The mind holds the comparison close and lets the calendar do the rest. The recurring payment becomes less of a cost and more of a condition, like having electricity or a phone plan. And because it arrives as a string of small charges, it is rarely calculated as a whole. Many households can name their biggest bills without effort. Subscriptions, on the other hand, don't present themselves as a single bill. They present as fragments, scattered across weeks, across apps, across corporate names that don't match the brand on the screen. The system doesn't demand a monthly reckoning. It simply continues. At a mechanical level, subscriptions are a standardized deal. Ongoing access in exchange for ongoing payment, routed through automatic billing. The automatic part is not a footnote, it is the point. In most consumer contexts, the default state after sign-up is persistence. The product does not need to be rebought. The payment does not need to be reapproved. The service does not need to be rechosen. That default state is valuable because it turns revenue into something predictable. For a business, one-time purchases are lumpy. They depend on launches, promotions, seasonality, and customer attention. Recurring revenue smooths those spikes into a baseline that can be forecast, borrowed against, and presented to investors as stability. The subscription doesn't just sell a service. It sells certainty about future cash flow. Once certainty exists, incentives rearrange. Customer acquisition becomes an upfront investment, ads, partnerships, free trials, discount periods. The goal is not merely to sell a product once, but to place a charge into a repeating cycle. In that cycle, small improvements to retention, reducing cancellations, increasing engagement, nudging upgrades, can produce outsized financial returns. A tiny drop in churn, repeated across a large customer base, becomes a meaningful shift in revenue. Pricing strategy follows the same logic. A monthly fee can be kept low enough to feel like an easy decision, while the annual total quietly becomes significant. Add-ons and tiering allow revenue to expand without forcing everyone to pay the same amount. Bundles reduce comparisons by making it harder to assign a price to any single part. And annual plans do something subtle. They move the cancellation decision farther away in time, where it competes with fewer immediate pressures. The payment infrastructure supports this persistence. Card networks, app stores, and payment processors are built for recurring charges. They handle retries when a charge fails, send token updates when cards expire, and offer merchants tools to reduce involuntary cancellations. Even when a person's card changes, the relationship can be designed to survive the transition. What persists, then, is not merely a product people use. It is a revenue stream supported by software, pricing, policy, and payment rails that all prefer continuity. The system keeps running not because it is mysterious, but because it is efficient. The invisibility is psychological as much as it is technical. Human attention is not built to monitor dozens of small, recurring commitments. A large, infrequent expense triggers attention because it is disruptive. A small, frequent expense becomes familiar. Familiarity is often interpreted as safety, even when the total is uncertain. There is also the way the mind treats sunk cost and ongoing access. Once a subscription exists, it can feel like an asset. Even if it goes unused for weeks, it still represents a door that could be opened at any moment. The payment is justified by possibility, not by actual consumption. A person may not watch anything this month, but the library is still there. The gym app may not be opened, but the plan still exists. The mind can treat these as standby systems, like keeping a spare key. Design choices reinforce this. Many subscription services are built around intermittent reward. A new episode, a new feature, a new release, a new email about what's been added. Not constant enough to feel like a daily utility, but frequent enough to keep the subscription emotionally alive. The service stays present in the imagination, even when it disappears from the day's schedule. Then there is the naming problem. Billing descriptors often read like corporate entities or payment processors, not the brand identity that lives in a phone. A person might remember subscribing to a meditation app, but the statement shows a shortened legal name. The charge is real, but it is not instantly recognized. That tiny delay in recognition matters, because attention is fragile, and most people move on quickly when nothing appears urgent. Friction plays a role too, not as a dramatic barrier, but as a series of small obstacles. Password resets, confirm cancellation screens, limited customer support hours, the need to cancel in one place even though the subscription started in another, such as an app store or a web portal. None of this needs to be impossible. It only needs to be less convenient than doing nothing. Doing nothing is the system's favorite outcome. Finally, subscriptions are invisible because they are normalized socially. A household that pays for multiple platforms doesn't feel unusual. A professional stack of paid tools doesn't feel extravagant. The baseline expectation shifts from owning things to maintaining access. Once access becomes the norm, the recurring payments stop feeling like repeated decisions and start feeling like the cost of living in a particular version of modern life. When subscriptions scale, they change how money moves through the economy. A single household might carry a dozen recurring charges without any one of them seeming decisive. Multiply that by millions of households and the result is an enormous transfer of steady cash into a relatively small set of firms. The most valuable part is not always content or functionality. It is the subscription relationship itself, the recurring permission to bill. For businesses, this creates a structural advantage. Predictable subscription revenue can fund expansion, acquisitions, and marketing that reinforces dominance. It can also justify operating at thin margins in some areas, because the lifetime value of a retained customer compensates for low monthly pricing. In markets with strong subscription leaders, competitors often feel forced to adopt the same model, not because it is always the best for users, but because it is the best for revenue predictability. It also affects product design at an industry level. In a purchase model, the moment of value is concentrated. The product must justify the price at the moment of sale. In a subscription model, value can be distributed differently. The product must justify continued payment, but it can do that through constant minor updates, periodic highlights, and a general sense of ongoing improvement. The service can be engineered for habitual touchpoints rather than deep satisfaction. Not always, but often enough to be noticeable. Normalization follows. As more categories move to subscriptions, entertainment, software, transportation access, home services, the idea of paying repeatedly for the same category becomes less remarkable. The monthly budget becomes a patchwork of contracts. Some are explicit, like insurance. Others are semi-optional, like entertainment. But they begin to share a common feature. They're all set and forget until something breaks. Structurally, those who benefit most are the entities positioned to collect recurring payments at scale, major platforms, large service providers, and intermediaries that take a cut of transactions. App stores, card networks, payment processors, and aggregators benefit from volume and continuity. The subscription economy is not only a set of companies offering services, it is an ecosystem of systems that monetize ongoing billing. Subscriptions are often described as convenience, and that's accurate as far as it goes. They remove friction, they spread costs, they make access immediate, they make certain luxuries feel routine. But the deeper story is that subscriptions are a method of turning attention into revenue and then designing around the fact that attention is limited. This is why subscriptions fade into the background. The system doesn't need secrecy, it needs normalcy. It needs a person to feel that the service is part of the environment, like running water, always there, rarely counted, occasionally noticed when something changes. In older consumer models, the transaction was the event. Money changed hands, ownership transferred, and the relationship quieted until the next purchase. The subscription reverses that rhythm. The transaction becomes the default state, and silence becomes consent. The relationship continues even when it is not being thought about. What's left is a financial landscape made of small repeating agreements, some useful, some unused, many unexamined, not because anyone is incapable of noticing, but because the modern economy is good at making repetition feel like background noise. The charges keep arriving with the calm regularity of a calendar, and the calendar, unlike attention, rarely misses a month.